If studying feels slow, painful, or impossible to stay consistent with, the problem isn't your intelligence, it's not your discipline, and it's definitely not that you're not a study person. The real reason is much simpler. Your brain is trying to operate in a mode it was never designed for. Today, you're about to learn the most powerful, science-backed trick that can make you study 3 times faster. Not by forcing yourself, but by aligning your brain with the natural rhythm it uses to process, absorb, and store information. Once you understand this system, studying stops feeling like a fight and becomes something your brain actually wants to do. Let's begin where every transformation begins, with how your brain handles attention. Most people think studying is about sitting for long hours. Americans especially push the grind harder culture, believing more time equals more results. But neuroscience says the opposite. Your brain doesn't work like a marathon runner. It works like a sprinter. It performs at peak intensity in short, controlled bursts where dopamine, adrenaline, and acetylcholine rise together. These 3 chemicals are the study acceleration trio, and when they're activated correctly, your brain enters a state scientists call deep focus mode. This is the exact state where you learn 3 times faster, remember longer, and understand deeper. But here's the issue. Most people try to study while their brain is in the wrong state, distracted, unfocused, low energy, mentally cluttered. It's like trying to drive a Ferrari with the handbrake on. So the trick you're about to learn is not another generic study hack. It is a neuroscience-based method called the activation loop, a 3-phase system designed to switch your brain into deep focus mode on command. It works for students, entrepreneurs, programmers, and anyone who needs to learn faster. But to understand why it works, you need to understand one thing. Your brain cannot generate focus unless it first clears the mental noise. You can force yourself to sit at the desk, but you cannot force your brain to absorb information. The activation loop fixes this by controlling what your brain pays attention to before you even begin. And the first phase of that loop is called the cognitive trigger. Here's how it works. Your brain needs a clear signal that focus time has started. Without a trigger, your mind drifts, gets lost, and goes into default mode, thinking about everything except what you're studying. But when you use a cognitive trigger, something incredible happens. Your prefrontal cortex sends out a signal that releases acetylcholine, sharpening attention instantly. Your trigger can be extremely simple: opening a specific notebook, playing the same instrumental track every session, sitting in the same chair, or even drinking a sip of water intentionally. The habit is not the magic, the consistency is. When your brain sees the same pattern repeatedly, it enters focus mode automatically. That reaction alone can double your study speed. But to study 3 times faster, we move to phase 2. The learning burst window. This is where the real acceleration happens. Your brain learns in bursts, not in long, slow sessions. The first 25 minutes after your cognitive trigger is your golden window, where dopamine rises, distractions fall, and your prefrontal cortex becomes a laser. This is why people who use learning bursts achieve in 1 hour what others take 3 hours to do. In this window, you must follow one rule: only one task. 0 multitasking, 0 switching. Americans multitask more than any culture in the world, and research shows task switching destroys study efficiency by up to 40%. Your brain needs uninterrupted depth. During this window, study actively. Teach yourself out loud, solve problems, make connections, or write summaries. Passive reading is slow. Active learning is 3 times faster because it pushes your brain to use more neural circuits. Now, after the burst, there's a moment most people ignore, the moment where learning actually becomes permanent. That's phase 3, the reinforcement reset. After your 25-minute burst, you take a 5-minute reset break, not scrolling your phone, not texting, not checking notifications, because every time you touch your phone, your dopamine gets hijacked and your brain exits the learning state. Instead, during these 5 minutes, you let your brain cool down. You walk, stretch, breathe slowly, or look outside a window. In this short reset, your brain begins memory consolidation, where the information you just learned starts forming long-term connections. Think of it like hitting save on your brain. Skip this step and you lose 30 to 50% of what you studied. Complete this step and your learning multiplies. This is the activation loop, and when repeated 3 to 4 times, it turns your study session into a peak performance cycle. But there's one more element, the one that makes this entire method truly unstoppable. It's something scientists call friction reduction. You study slower, not because studying is hard, but because starting is hard. The human brain resists big tasks, but it doesn't resist tiny tasks. So here's the trick. Never focus on studying for 2 hours. Focus on activating the loop once. Just one loop. A single 25-minute burst. That's it. When the task is small, resistance disappears, dopamine begins to rise, and momentum pulls you naturally into deeper focus. This is why people who start small always finish big. Now, if you're thinking, will this really make me study 3 times faster? Let me explain something most people don't know. When dopamine rises at the beginning of a task, your brain switches from friction to flow. When acetylcholine locks onto one task, your attention sharpens. And when adrenaline rises slightly, your energy and alertness increase. These 3 chemicals working together literally multiply your study speed. Your brain was built to operate in this chemistry. You've just never activated it correctly. But once you do, you'll feel it. Information sticks faster. Concepts make sense quicker. You stay focused longer without forcing yourself. And studying becomes something you can control, not something that controls you. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine 2 students. The first one studies for 3 straight hours, distracted, tired, switching between apps and materials. The second one uses the activation loop, 25 minutes of full focus, 5 minutes of reset, repeated 3 times. Same total time, but the second student learns more, remembers more, and finishes with more energy. The difference is not effort. The difference is brain state. And today, you learned the science behind controlling that state. Now, imagine what happens if you use this method every day. Imagine your grades improving. Imagine reading difficult concepts and actually understanding them. Imagine being the person who learns faster, remembers better, and performs consistently. Not because you're smarter, but because you finally learned how your brain works. If you want to transform your study life, start with 1 loop. Just 1. And watch how fast your brain adapts. Because studying isn't about how long you work. It's about how deeply your brain engages. And now you have the science to activate that depth on command.